When you hear 2008, you probably picture chaos. Markets crashing, banks folding, people losing everything. It was the worst day on Wall Street since 1987. And it didn't just shake the economy, it shattered lives. I wake up every night thinking, what could I have done differently? That pain still echoes. But here's the twist. Wall Street is playing the same game again. Only this time, the playbook is hidden. Different players, different language. But the end game? Still your job, your savings, your future. And the scariest part? It's all happening behind closed doors under a name you've heard, but probably don't understand. Private equity. They say they rescue failing businesses, toy stores, nursing homes, even your favorite football club, then flip them for a profit. Sounds harmless, right? But the truth is darker. These companies don't get saved, they get squeezed dry. Private equity loads them with debt, extracts profits, and walks away before the business collapses. And now that exact playbook is inflating a new bubble, one big enough to hit all of us. I spent weeks following the money, and in this video, I'll break down exactly how it works and why no one's stopping it. So what exactly does private equity do? In theory, they buy struggling businesses, like toy stores, nursing homes, or even your favorite football club, try to make them better, and sell them for a profit a few years later. That's the pitch. Sounds like smart investing, right? But here's how it actually works. Let me show you. Let's say I'm private equity, and I want to buy a company worth $100 million, but I don't want to risk much of my own money. So I put in just $20 million and borrow the other $80 million from a bank. Here's the trick. The company I just bought is now responsible for that $80 million loan, not me. That's called a leveraged buyout, or LBO. It's like buying a house and making the house pay its own mortgage. And if the roof caves in, that's not your problem. But I'm not done. Now I ask the bank, can the company borrow even more? It does. Not to build, expand, or innovate, but to pay me a bonus. That bonus is called a special dividend. And just like that, I've pulled out millions without improving the company at all. That's exactly what happened with Toys R Us. Private equity firms bought it, loaded it with debt, and paid themselves $470 million. 2 years later, the company was spending over $400 million annually just on interest. It never recovered. 33,000 people lost their jobs. To be fair, not all private equity firms operate like this. Some actually improve operations and create value, but that's no longer the dominant trend. What we're seeing more and more is extraction disguised as strategy. Businesses aren't being rebuilt, they're being bled dry. They become financial time bombs. And when they go off, workers, towns, and pensions take the blast, while investors walk away richer. Now here's where it gets even more dangerous. All that debt? It doesn't just sit on the books. Banks bundle it together, slice it into tranches, and sell it off. Just like they did with subprime mortgages in 2008. Except this time, it's not homes, it's entire companies. And the way they disguise the risk is something you truly need to see to believe. Exactly like they did with subprime mortgages in 2008. But instead of mortgages, this time it's corporate loans. Debt from companies that were bought out and over-leveraged by private equity. They call it a collateralized loan obligation, or CLO. And if that name sounds confusing, that's the point. Here's how it works in plain English. Imagine a giant pot of soup made from leftovers. Some ingredients are fresh, some are questionable. But once it's all stirred together, it's sold as new. That's a CLO. Banks take risky loans from dozens of private equity-owned companies, mix them together, and sell slices of that debt to investors. But they don't just sell it raw, they layer it. The top layer is rated AAA, super safe. Middle layer, medium risk. Bottom layer, junk, high risk, high reward. Sounds familiar? In 2008, they did this with mortgages, bundling together good loans and bad ones, then labeling the whole thing as safe. Now it's happening again, just with corporate debt. But here's the catch. The so-called safe layer often gets bought by pension funds and retirement systems. That's right. Your grandpa's retirement check might depend on a bundle of corporate loans from companies already drowning in debt. And if enough of those companies default, even the safe layer gets hit. This is how the risk spreads. One company's collapse becomes a crack in the wall. And the wall is holding up your savings, your job, and your community. And because everything is bundled, repackaged, and rated by agencies that profit from keeping investors calm, the true danger is hidden in plain sight. Now, some experts argue the system is more stable this time. Banks aren't holding as much of the risk. There aren't as many wild bets flying around. But remember, that's what they said last time too. And what happened? the entire system came crashing down. So the question isn't if there's a risk, it's how big it is, and who gets hit first. So, is this really the next 2008? I saw a viral TikTok that made a bold claim. Private equity is about to bankrupt the entire American pension system. That sounds extreme, but is it true? To find out, I spoke to someone who's worked deep inside the system, from private equity firms to actual pension funds. And the first thing they told me, there's real risk, but there's also nuance. Let's start with the basics. In the last few years, private equity firms have borrowed over $3.8 trillion. And a lot of that is adjustable rate debt. That means when interest rates rise, so do the payments. Sound familiar? In 2008, homeowners with adjustable rate mortgages couldn't keep up. Now, it's companies, and they're starting to buckle. Here's what that looks like. If a business was paying $10 million a year in interest, and rates double or triple, that bill could jump to $30 million overnight. And guess what? Companies are already defaulting. More than 5 out of every 100 can't pay their debts. That's the highest level since 2010. But it doesn't stop there. Over the next 3 years, nearly $1 trillion in corporate loans are coming due. And that creates a problem known as the maturity wall. Think of it like a highway full of buses, each one carrying a company heading toward a cliff. Unless they can refinance or pay their debt back in time, they're going off the edge. If credit dries up or interest rates stay high, millions of jobs could vanish almost overnight. Now, will this destroy the entire pension system? Not likely. Pension funds typically have only 10–15% of their investments in private equity. Even riskier high-yield debt is less than 5%. And not every company is failing. Some sectors, like healthcare, are more stable. So no, this probably won't be the next great financial crisis. But it could absolutely hammer everyday Americans, especially those working in companies owned by private equity. And that still means your job, your community, your savings could be exposed without you even knowing it. Maybe you're thinking, okay, private equity is shady, but how does this affect me? Here's the thing. You don't need to work on Wall Street to feel the collapse. If you're part of the real economy, the one with paychecks, bills, and savings, you're already in the blast zone. Private equity now owns over 12,000 companies in the US. That includes restaurants, grocery chains, call centers, hospitals, and more. And when these companies go under, it's not just headlines, it's jobs, local economies, families. Joanne Fabrics, gone. Payless, gone. Toys R Us, gone. These weren't just brands, they were employers, anchors in thousands of communities. And if the debt bomb hits more companies, it won't just be grandpa's pension taking the hit. It'll be the cashier down the street, the nurse, the warehouse worker. That's the real danger. The collapse doesn't start with stock prices. It starts with layoffs. So when we talk about bubbles, we're not just talking about investors losing money. We're talking about people losing their lives as they know them. Here's another twist. Even if your company isn't owned by private equity, it could still get hit. Because when one domino falls, the rest get shaky. Suppliers lose contracts, customers dry up, lending gets tighter, and suddenly stable businesses get dragged down by the ones that weren't. This ripple effect is how local recessions become national ones. And here's the kicker. All of it is happening in slow motion, under layers of financial jargon. That's why most people don't see it coming. But the signs are there. Bankruptcies are rising, debt is piling up, and companies are racing against the clock to refinance before they hit the wall. If they can't, millions of jobs could disappear, communities could be gutted, and the people who caused it, they'll walk away richer than ever. So yes, the next crash may not look exactly like 2008, but for millions of Americans, the pain could feel just the same. So if the risks are so obvious, why doesn't anyone stop it? Because private equity isn't just good at making money, they're even better at protecting it. Start with the carried interest loophole. When you earn a paycheck, you might pay up to 37% in taxes. But when private equity firms earn millions in profits, they call it carried interest and pay just 20%. That's not a small discount. It slashes their tax bill nearly in half, and it saves the industry billions every year. And when lawmakers try to close the loophole, private equity opens their checkbooks. In just one election cycle, they spent over $296 million on campaign contributions and lobbying. That money doesn't go to chance, it goes to power. They target key committees in Congress. And it's not about party loyalty. They donate to both Democrats and Republicans. Whoever's in charge, private equity makes sure their interests are covered. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act was supposed to finally close that loophole. But 3 lawmakers who took 6-figure checks from private equity, they stripped it out at the last minute. Even when regulators try to push back, the system pushes harder. In 2023, the SEC passed a rule requiring private equity funds to disclose risks and fees to investors. Pretty basic stuff. Within months, 6 private equity industry groups sued. By May 2024, a federal court struck the rule down. And here's the real kicker. Jay Clayton, the guy who used to run the SEC, he now sits on the board of Apollo, one of the biggest private equity firms in the world. It's a revolving door. Regulators become executives, and the watchdogs end up working for the people they were supposed to watch. So if you've ever wondered why no one ever goes to jail, why no one ever shuts it down, this is why. Money doesn't just influence the system, it writes the rules. And while politicians argue over scraps, private equity is 10 steps ahead, quietly shaping the economy in their favor. So here we are again. The system is bloated with risk, the warning signs are flashing, and the same financial playbook from 2008 is being run all over again. Except this time, the risk isn't tied to houses, it's tied to entire companies. And instead of big banks holding the bag, it's pension funds, retirement accounts, and working people who might not even know they're invested. We've seen this movie before, but this time, it's playing out in the shadows. That's the genius and danger of private equity. They operate behind the curtain, using loopholes, legal engineering, and massive lobbying to avoid transparency. And when it all falls apart, the damage hits regular people first, not the executives who built the system. But here's the truth. They get away with it because we don't understand how it works. And if we don't understand it, we can't fight it. That's why I made this video. Because when enough people know the playbook, we stop playing defense. So what can you do? First, stay informed, read, watch. Learn how money really moves. Second, talk about it. Share this video. Start a conversation. Your coworkers, your friends, your parents, they're affected too. Third, pay attention to policy. That tax loophole you've never heard of? It's costing taxpayers billions while padding billionaires' pockets. And if you ever feel powerless, remember, awareness is a form of resistance. Because if enough people demand better, the game changes. Will this be the next 2008? Maybe not in the same form, but for the people losing their jobs, their savings, or their futures, does the label even matter? It's happening now. And history doesn't just rhyme, it repeats. The only question is whether we'll fall for it again. So don't just scroll. Make this the start of your own power move. Because in a world where money writes the rules, understanding the game is the most powerful move you can make. And if you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to see it. We're not done yet. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more content. Want to start your own business but don't know where to start? Check out my startup kit to create your business in 7 days with a simple plug-and-play system. Check out the description box below. Thanks for watching.